Welcome to another episode of the Lords of Consciousness podcast. I am your host, Clint Culberson, and today is another beautiful day. We've been doing almost like a marathon of interviews with some amazing people. One of the things that we really focus on, one of our primary missions, is to just be a part of the shifting of paradigms in this world today in all of the aspects. Recently we had an interview with Mads Palsvig about, shifting the paradigm within the financial system. We've had author Brad Olson on, who's also talking about the financial system and the military-industrial complex and a plethora of other of topics. But when it comes to the real foundation of a society, I do believe that it starts with fresh water and good and clean food, and that really does start in terms of it does start with agriculture and how we take care of the land, because at the end of the day we are the stewards of this planet, and we've unfortunately taken our stewardship and gone quite a bizarre direction over the last 100 years. And today's guest is really someone that I am beyond stoked to have on. I've been a big fan of him for a long time. He's really probably America's most popular farmer, Mr. Joel Salatin. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, and I hope you are.
Oh, man, I am doing really well this morning. I've really been just so excited to get you on here. I was just beyond ecstatic that you've found some time to talk with me today. And again, not even so much about talking with me, but again, having another median in terms of getting the truths that you're sharing with the world out there. And so you just got to show up, and I'll put the video out and put the audio out. And again, someone's going to listen to this and change their paradigm by hearing the things that you have to say. So it's honestly just truly grateful.
Sure. Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Joel, can you explain, you're on a farm out in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, beautiful country, holy cow, and you farm mostly livestock, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of just explain to us like your history in terms of, what you guys are doing on the polyface farms right now? And also just your history in terms of what else you've dabbled in, because I'm sure you've had experience in all realms of agriculture.
Yeah, well, we're in what we call pastured livestock as a general rule. We're in the Shenandoah Valley, which of course was a tall grass prairie back before the Europeans came, and it was essentially a big savanna, or also known as a silvopasture, widely spaced trees and grasslands, maintained by the Native Americans by fire, and of course the big herds of buffalo and wolves and things, and the migratory or choreography, and built these deep soils, and then when the Europeans came, of course, they put the plow in and inverted them, and then they eroded, and so by the time we came, 3 to 5 feet of soil had left, and we were down to rocks and subsoil and gullies some 16 feet deep. And so when we came in 1961, our family had to go about what I call a redemption process, a remediation process of bringing this land back from complete devastation. And so we looked to nature for patterns. And a couple of things you notice in nature. One is that it's perennially based, not annually based. And for people that don't understand, a perennial is something that you don't have to plant every year, and an annual is something that you do have to plant every year. So all of our grains, corn, soybeans, garden vegetables, most garden vegetables, squash and pumpkins and cucumbers, those are all annuals. They go through an entire, live and die cycle in a season, make seed, and then you plant the seed again the next spring. Whereas a perennial, like a tree, a shrub, grasses, are don't have to be planted every year. The plant, it might die back in the winter, but it sprouts again in the spring. And that's the difference between a perennial and an annual. And so we said, well, we need to have a lot of perennials. Well, what does nature do with perennials? Well, it grazes them. All the deep soils in the world were created under perennial grasses, not forests, not shrubs, and certainly not tillage, because nature doesn't till. And so we went to herbivores, of course, which prune the grasses and keep them actively growing. But they do it in a very systematic way. The herbivores have a migratory choreography, and they don't stay in one place, so they move. Well, how do we move them? Well, we don't have wolves, we don't have fire, and we have a little plot of land with a fence around it, and the neighbors don't want the cows, don't want the herbivores over on their place, and so we use high-tech, space-age electric fencing as an accelerator, a steering wheel, and a brake on that four-legged sauerkraut vat, who is out there pruning that biomass to restart the very fast engine of growth when it's pruned, like a viticulturalist would prune a vineyard or an orchardist an apple tree. And so then we say, okay, so now we've got the pruning going on with the herbivore. So now what's next? Well, we look around, we say, well, nature has a lot of diversity. You don't have just single animal systems or single plant systems. You have multi-speciation in nature. And so we began adding things. We said, well, how does nature sanitize behind herbivores? With birds. And so we have an eggmobile that follows the cows. So the cows move every day at 4 o'clock, and then the eggmobiles come in behind them a couple days later, and the chickens, birds, free range out, sanitize the paddock, eat the fly larvae out of the cow patties, eat the grasshoppers and crickets that have been exposed by the pruning process, and it all works very symbiotically and synergistically. So, well, how does nature fertilize? Well, it does it with carbon. It doesn't do it with chemical fertilizers and petroleum. It does it with carbon, and the carbon is generated nearby on site. Nature doesn't move carbon very far. It doesn't ship it around the planet. It doesn't import it from the Middle East. It generates it on site. And so we got a chipper, and we incorporate the forest. So we're taking down diseased and crooked trees, chipping those up, using them as carbon to do large-scale composting that we do with pigs. So we use animals to do the work instead of machinery to do the work, and that makes the compost piles, which then act as the fertilizer. So the carbon is generated on site. The point is that it's all solar. It's all solar driven. So anyway, you see kind of the way we think. We're looking at these natural models, and so today we grow cows, pigs, chickens, layers, meat, and turkeys, rabbit, duck, lamb, and of course, we have vegetables and fruit for our own consumption. We don't sell much. We sell some extra when we need to, but we don't sell much. And then we also have a bandsaw mill, and we sell lumber from the forest. They're millable trees, and sell lumber as well. So it's a heavily diversified, multifaceted place. That's why we call it Polyface Farm, the farm of many faces.
Yeah. I first discovered you from the documentary Food Inc. You were this exuberant farmer from Virginia, that Southern accent, kind of just explaining what a rogue you were, and you're known as this alternative farmer. And yet the irony is you're really doing things that have kind of always been done, and it's really, in fact, it seems almost like the methods that we're using on a wide scale now, that's really the alternative, even though it's become the mainstream. And granted, I know that you've incorporated the new technologies with kind of this your archaic way of taking care of the land and taking care of the soil and taking care of your animals and kind of I guess that would be the alternative part of it, but combining the new technologies with this archaic methods that you're kind of bringing back, and it's been a lot of knowledge that's been known throughout the generations, but had been lost. Like many things, it's not just agriculture. There's so many things like that.
Well, the truth is that the hand of man, if you will, has generally been a negative force on the face of the earth. There are certainly shining examples. where it has been a positive force, but more times than not, it has been a negative force. And so, this isn't really an old versus new, or a, grandpa versus modern. It's more, what are the ecological patterns that actually heal and work, which ones aren't, and then we innovate either the design, the systems, or the technology to enable us to better leverage those patterns. And let's take for example, water pipes. Back in the old days, everything had to go to the creek to drink, and water only ran downhill. Today, with water pipe, we can make a stream run uphill. That's pretty cool. And that doesn't require a pump. On our farm now, we have 6 miles of water line laid out around all the fields, and all the water comes from ponds that we've developed permaculture fashion up in the high hills, and that water gravity feeds down, so we have 80 psi water with no pumps, no electricity,
wow,
no relays, no switches, all over the farm in a pipe. So we can go as long as the hill doesn't go up above the initial intake. We can make, even by gravity, we can build up pressure, and then we can go up a hill, and then back down a hill. So we can actually place water wherever we want it. That is such an amazing landscape development compared to what was done long time ago. So I appreciate that. Yes, the diversified farm of our ancestors was diversified because they didn't have a supermarket, and they had the first, they had to subsist themselves, and then they had to have these symbiotic arrangements, which actually created its own efficiency and self-protection. And so yes, we certainly do plenty of that, but it's a much more sophisticated, advanced system. I mean, let's take electric poultry netting, for example. The stuff's only been around for 20, 30 years. Brand new technology that allows us to have 150 feet of a coyote, wolf, badger, possum, chicken-proof fence that only weighs 12 pounds, and it's completely mobile. You can take it up and put it down in 10 minutes. Who would have thunk 50 years ago that we would have something like that? And one of the big breakthroughs that enabled us to have something like that was, of course, the ability to spin polyethylene, a completely synthetic material, but secondly, computer microchip pulsers, electric fence energizers, to shorten the pulse down and increase the voltage to where we could actually send high pressure, low amperage, high voltage, low amperage sparks through a wire with such a short pulse that it doesn't build up enough resistance to melt the polyethylene as it goes through. I mean, these little stainless steel filaments woven through the polyethylene on these fences is just almost invisible to the naked eye. They're small as a human hair almost, and yet they pack a powerful punch to keep the chickens in and keep the predators out. So the point is that we can now run large commercial flocks, 1,000 birds or so. We can run those in a more hygienic, actually chicken-friendly, more secure fashion than you could a backyard flock on an American homestead 100 years ago. And that's the accelerated technology part of this whole equation.
Yeah, and I guess it's contributing to what the future holds in terms of maximizing the land that we use, so we don't have to use so much land to grow our food. I wanted to see if you could give us a quick synopsis, a quick 101 on industrialized agriculture, factory farming. Can you I know this, you could go on literally for 6 hours about this, but can you kind of give for the uninitiated, what is the current system and what is wrong with it, and why is it unsustainable, and why we must make a quick change as soon as possible?
Well, where do you start? A couple things I think first come to mind. One is that the industrial system essentially views life as fundamentally mechanical as opposed to biological. And that's a huge distinction. We're pretty much the first society in the history of the planet to view life as fundamentally a mechanical thing rather than a biological thing. And so what happens is, in mechanics, you don't have to. A mechanical thing does not think for itself, and so the reactions, the physics of the machine are pretty straightforward. Whereas with biology, there is thought, there is sentience, and there is genetic mutation, there's adaptation, there's change. If you build a car and sell it in a desert, that there's nothing about that car that actually adapts to a desert compared to the same model that you sell to an Eskimo. That machine is going to be the same. But when it comes to biology, there is adaptation, there is morphing, there's change, and there's genetic change. There's, of course, epigenetics, all sorts of things happening. So the idea of a mind of its own, a mind and sentience and adaptation, is extremely biologically activated. And so what happens is that then life adapts. And so when you, for example, begin spraying herbicides all the time, the weeds adapt to the herbicides, and the survivors become stronger and stronger and develop immunities. And of course, it's what's happening with antibiotics now. We've used all these antibiotics, and so now the survivors develop mutant, ninja bugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of mutant ninja turtles, mutant ninja bugs, and we've got these super bugs, and we've got all this additional toxicity and pathogenicity, more virulent pathogenicity, as a result of the overuse due to adaptation. And so the mechanical specificity, I mean, when you make a car, when you make a spark plug, that spark plug is going to function exactly the same way every single time. But when you select a tomato plant or a pepper or a cow, the offspring are not like the spark plug, and so that's one of the big differences, and of course it plays out, like I say, in super bugs, super weeds, super pathogens, different things, as you go down this mechanical path where you think that you can manipulate this with specificity. We can't manipulate life with specificity like we can manipulate a mechanical object. But the second thing is that the industrial system segregates. So part of this mechanical idea is the idea of specialization. So the multi-dimensional farm of our ancestors has been replaced by a single-dimensional farm. A chicken farm, a dairy, and a cherry orchard, an apple orchard, a squash place, whatever. And so instead of having an extremely relationally complex speciation, what we have is a very simplistic monospeciated system, which again allows the pathogenic hosts, weeds and whatever, to be able to proliferate because you have so many hosts congregated so densely in one spot. We all know that if the school system has an outbreak of some disease, the best cure is to shut down the school system and tell all the kids stay home for a week till this whole, thing passes. That the answer is not to take all the kids and put them in the gymnasium for a week. And we understand that, we know that, and yet industrial farming treats life exactly that way, which in other areas we know is ridiculous. So these are, and then finally, when you take a very simplistic mechanistic view toward the soil with chemical fertilizer, what happens is that you reduce the complexity and the ability of what I call the underground cafe. I'll trade you some polysaccharides for some zinc, and you got all this underground cafe going here, kind of like in Star Trek, the cafe where you got all this stuff going on. Think about that in the soil. That's exactly what's going on. You have this commercial cafe going on down there. What happens is with the chemical fertilizer and the reduction in soil life, that starts to break down. It simplifies, and that creates a simplified nutrition. So our bodies are extremely complex. I mean, we're 85% non-human, only 15% human. We have 3 bacteria around every single one of our cells, and those bacteria are not human, human things, beings. And so as we reduce that complexity, we reduce the nutritional capacity of food to be able to feed us the balanced and intricate array of nutrition that all of our diversified bacteria want and need. And so then that nutrient deficiency shows up in all sorts of problems, from obesity to diseases, degenerative diseases and things like that. And so there's a reason why in our culture, we lead the world in chronic problems, and other places, developing countries die of infectious diseases, and because we have cleaner water and indoor plumbing and soap and take a shower and things like that, we don't die so much of the infectious diseases anymore. What we're getting are all these chronic diseases.
Yeah, and you're saying that it's a direct cause of this monoculture farming and the chemicals that we're adding and the fertilizers we're adding, and is this really what one of the part of the term, the Frankenfood? Yes.
It's a direct result of a simplification in the entire food web. When you begin to simplify it, and you take the germ out of the wheat, and then you add some nutrients back in and call it fortified flour, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We can't make wheat germ. That we can't go to the lab and make this stuff. And grain finished beef, for example, has 300% less riboflavin than grass finished beef, which is of course using the herbivore in its traditional perennial pruning role. Well, what's the importance of riboflavin? What does that mean when you have 300% less riboflavin? Well, riboflavin is one of the fatty acids that calms your nerves. All right, and so one of the reasons we're having so much anger and bouncing off the walls and people shooting people and whatever, going nuts though, is not just the IRS.
It's riboflavin and the IRS. Damn it, we figured it out.
It's also the fact that we're not getting these essential fatty acids. Riboflavin is the one that calms you down. And I mean, and there are tons of these, omega-3, omega-6 ratios, conjugated linoleic acid, which is an anti-carcinogen.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a whole pile of these differences. Vitamin A. I mean, we took, for example, our eggs to a test sponsored by Mother Earth News magazine, and folic acid, which is really important for pregnancies. Folic acid, the supermarket eggs, the USDA average is 48 micrograms per egg, and ours average 1,048 micrograms per egg. I mean,
wow.
The differences are just incredible. And honestly, we don't know all the whys and wherefores
right.
of these things. But intuitively, it makes sense to me to assume that if there's that big a difference, it probably is important.
Right. And you had mentioned, I've heard you mention this before in terms of take chickens, which are such a huge part of our food system here in the United States. They're omnivores. They're not meant to just eat grain, they're meant to scrounge around in the dirt and get bugs and get the protein in their bodies in order for them to be the healthiest chicken that they can be, or as you call
right.
it, let a chicken find its chickenness.
Express the chickenness of the chicken. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so yes, so what we're after here is wanting every plant and animal to be in a habitat that allows it to fully express its physiological distinctiveness. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to assume philosophically, if not scientifically. In other words, if we can't prove this scientifically, it certainly makes sense philosophically that if we're eating foods consistently that hold the physiological or whatever the full expression of that being that holds it, if our production holds it back, and that's what we're ingesting all the time, it's not a leap to assume that if I'm eating unexpressed stuff all the time, well then maybe I'm going to be unexpressed too. My full health, vigor, vitality, intellectual capacity, emotional stability, spiritual awareness, you go down the line, is not being fully expressed either. And Sir Albert Howard, the godfather of modern composting, said in 1943 in his iconic book, what is it called? Testament, an agricultural testament. He said, when you create artificial soil using artificial manures, that's what he calls chemical fertilizers, artificial manures, to make artificial soil, you grow artificial plants, which grow artificial animals, which grow artificial people, who can only be kept alive by the use of artificials. And that was 1943, and look what's happened to the growth of pharmaceuticals in this country.
And I think what the industry is finding out now is, that Mother Nature, in a sense, is starting to have her kickback in terms of our ability to manipulate things and just to always have some sort of scientific advancement in order to overcome nature. I mean, the fact that we're trying to even overcome nature is insane. But yeah, I think I've heard you even talk about it where it's not working anymore. You can't pump any more antibiotics into our cows. You can't put any more fertilizers on our fields. It's starting to push back.
Yes, well, not only do you have the law of diminishing returns, but then you have the principle of toxicity as well. And so where initially there was enough resiliency in the system to take some abuse, as we've abused and abused and abused, it tends to exponentially gain ground, so that the abuse becomes more and more acute, and then you start showing up additional things. A dead zone the size of New Jersey in the Gulf of Mexico. You start seeing additional autoimmune diseases and autism and we don't have the smoking gun on all these things, but I think there's a deep intuitive understanding among people that the level of physical, emotional, social maladies that we're seeing in our culture, are well, they're aberrant. They're aberrant, and we don't have direct causal links to everything. But people come to food. They come to food one at a time, and I'm not talking about diets here so much as I'm talking about simply an awareness of, well, as Michael Pollan says, eating like Grandma ate, and what Grandma. The reason that that's important is because when you study those older people groups, you don't see the chronic diseases that we have today. They died of infection of, after childbirth. The number one reason women died in 1900 was burns. Burns, yeah. Hoop skirts and hearth cooking didn't go well together. Mama's got this big wide hoop skirt on. She flips around in front of the hearth cooking dinner, catches on fire, and there goes Mama, up in flames. And,
there goes Mama.
And so the reason that life expectancy and things were low, back then was not because people had cancer and heart disease and obesity and diabetes. It was because of these life was hard. I mean, you didn't turn on a faucet and get water. You had to go down to the spring to get water, and you might stumble on a rock and break a leg, and you didn't have, a way to keep infection out. I mean, in a time before gauze. I mean, think about a time before Band-Aids, before gauze bandages. You had to use like cotton. How are you going to get that cotton clean? I mean, you got lye soap you made from the pig, the pig fat last fall. You see what I'm saying?
Gangrene was much more common in the Midwest, if I recall.
Absolutely. And so these infectious things were huge back then. That just simply being able to have clean water in a faucet and hot water and soap and those kind of that's made a big difference in our lives.
So, Joel, are you going to live well past 100?
Oh, I have no idea. I could die tomorrow.
Okay, barring you don't get caught on fire or anything like that. I mean, it does make you wonder.
I'll try not to wear my hoop skirt around the fireplace at least.
It does make you wonder, though, as we combine the technological advancements. I mean, it doesn't, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater with Western medicine. I mean, there are some really incredible feats that we've overcome. But as we enter into this new age, and we start combining, we take the goods from what's happened over the last 100 years, and then we also start bringing back some of the knowledge that we've had from a long time ago, and then also combining the two, bringing them together. It makes you wonder how long humans will start living, because I can only imagine most of the diseases we have are totally preventable. I mean, the stuff that you're talking about, or most of it's completely preventable. And it makes you really wonder, what is the real longevity of the human species if we get this right, if we get these systems right? And, and you had mentioned it before, this is a spiritual thing. I think being a steward of the land, being a farmer, I think the best farmer is also going to have a spiritual relationship with everything he or she does. And as we start coming into more alignment within our own spirituality, with the spirituality of the planet, with whatever we call God, I think we're going to see very healthy human beings, and it'll be fascinating to see where it takes us. And I kind of wanted to ask you, you've been one of the titles of your book is. Hold on, I'm pulling it up. I love it. The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer. Great name, by the way. And my other favorite name is Everything I Want to Do is Illegal. So these are both your books. I totally relate to that one. The fact that you're even looked at as a lunatic is kind of bizarre to anyone who has just common sense logic, like anyone who doesn't know anything about farming. And they're going to listen to two sides of things. They're going to listen to what the industrialized agriculture has, bring a Monsanto head in, and we're going to have a debate with Joel Salatin. I think that the vast majority of people who knew nothing about farming would commonsensically just see what you're doing makes complete sense. So, as a movement, you've been at this for a while. Do you see it catching on in a big way? Is it going, is it frustrating, the growth that you've seen in terms of farmers who are adapting, or are you, give me the status report in terms of the movement that you're a part of.
Yes. But it's like I call it one step or two steps forward and one step back.
Yeah.
And what happens is that you feel like you're making some real progress, and then you see some real backward movement.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the deal: the orthodoxy of our day. And the orthodoxy includes, of course, Monsanto, the FDA, the USDA, and Cargill, and Syngenta, and Aventis, and you can go right on down the line. Yum brewed brands, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. The orthodoxy of our day is built up around some pretty specific assumptions. The assumption that we can segregate our food, the food should be cheap, that it's just material, that it's mechanical, those sorts of orthodoxies. And that still absolutely rules the day. And so as soon as you start questioning that basic orthodoxy, then of course you're branded a heretic or a lunatic. And of course, we all know that innovation comes from lunatic fringe. There's business books about this, outliers and lunatic fringe and all this. And so, the problem is, as you move into a socialistic culture like we are, where everybody asks for the government to intervene in everything, is that what happens is the innovators are not viewed as interesting folks or even just weird folks. They're actually viewed as an assault against the efficient functioning of the orthodoxy. And this is the problem. And so what we desperately need to do in our culture today, look, the answers to E. coli, Campylobacter, Listeria, mad cow disease, we didn't feed dead cows to cows not because we hated science or the USDA or new ideas. It was because we looked around the planet for a model where herbivores eat carrion, and we couldn't find it. And we said, we don't see a pattern like this, so we're not going to do it. Well, and we were branded barbarians, Luddites, Neanderthals, whatever. And 30 years later, suddenly, we actually were right. And so the thing I want to point out here is that in order for a culture to actually stay innovative, it has to create an accepting climate for outliers to actually ply their trade, to try their stuff, to do their thing without being burned at the stake. Right now, we have SWAT teams, for example, going in. If you form a food group and you say we're gonna have a private club here of 20 families, and we're gonna get raw milk and backyard chicken and homemade charcuterie and homemade pot pie, and we're gonna eat really close to the land and da-da-da-da. Next thing you know, a SWAT team is going to come in from the sheriff's department and confiscate your garage full of food because it doesn't have the right label on it, or it's not been licensed, or it's not in compliance with some food code, blah blah blah. That's what's going to happen. That's what's happening right now, over and over and over. And so what we desperately need is to allow consenting adults to make voluntary decisions about what to ingest, so that each person has the right to the food of their choice from the source of their choice. Mm-hmm. And if I want to get raw milk and you want to get pasteurized, that's fine. I'm not gonna say you shouldn't have pasteurized. Why should you say I can't have raw milk? I mean, that's the problem. I'm not out here trying to shut down the orthodoxy. I'm just saying the orthodoxy, could you just back off and let us out here weirdos, let us experiment out here on the edges. And maybe we'll figure out a way to raise chickens without E. coli and cows without, mad cow and therapeutic milk and whatever. And so what we're seeing right now, the status report that you asked for is a fascinating one, because what we're seeing is as our side develops, momentum and gets market share, and depending on what report you read, we're anywhere from 2 to 6% now of market share. As we get that a little more market share, the orthodoxy is not ignoring us anymore. They're fighting back. And so you're seeing multi-million dollar alliances forming within the industrial food community, for example, to impugn outdoor pigs, for example. One big report came out just yesterday. Another one came out on chickens 2 weeks ago. That it's not safe to allow chickens to have access to the outdoors. The Poultry Improvement Organization under the USDA and within the industry has just come out. I've got to do a posting on it in the next day or two. Has just come out with a policy statement that it is not safe for our society to let a chicken have outdoor access. I mean, this is the pushback we're seeing. Gosh. And Gandhi said first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then they try to discredit you, and then they fight you, and then you win, or something like that. There's this progression. And so now
that's a
we're
good
in the
sign,
fight.
man.
Yeah, we're in the fight stage. Absolutely, we're in the fight stage, and it'll be up to the American consumer, up to the American, the food buyer, to decide which one of these systems am I going to feed. And that's why at our farm we have the slogan, "Healing the planet one bite at a time," because we actually believe that what's on your plate. And I'm not trying to make a cult out of this and saying you can't have a Snickers bar or a Coke once a month, okay? But I am saying, at the end of the week, if there's two dogs in the room and one stands for let's rape and pillage and use it up and make dead zones and pharmaceutical companies up the wazoo, if that's one dog, and the other dog is saying let's build soil, let's have clean air, potable water, and give God a return on his investment. If that's the other dog, at the end of the week, which dog did you feed? That's my question. and if we keep feeding the dog of clean air, soil building, nutrient density instead of nutrient deficiency, if we keep feeding that dog, guess what? The other dog is going to gradually get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And that really is, the way I see this great, conflict shaping up. It's not going to be fought in the halls of Congress. Halls of Congress are there to prop up the orthodoxy and make special subsidies and concessions to make sure the orthodoxy survives. And so we need to understand that where we are is the culmination of billions of decisions that our forebears and we have been making up until now, and where our children will be in 30 years will be the culmination of billions of decisions that we've made between now and then. And we just and we can't make the same decisions and hope for different results. That's a permutation on insanity, right? Doing the same thing. And
yeah, exactly. And for anyone listening, when you're listening to what Joel's saying, the idea that where we spend our money really is our vote. We're starting to see that our politicians, the whole system is completely corrupt. Not even really sure our vote for them even matters. But one thing that does matter is where we spend our money, and what, like you said, which dog are you going to feed? That really does make a difference in supporting local agriculture, supporting local farmers markets, CSAs. Really does make a humongous difference, and it's really a much more important issue than people realize. You know, the money that you're gonna that in the long term that you'll save, and by buying a little bit more expensive organic local produce that is grown by farmers using the practices that you're talking about, who take their role as a steward of the land very, it's part of their purpose. Your money is going to literally change the world, and we really need as a people, it's time to step up above and beyond just, I like going to the farmer's market and that's it. No, man, it's much bigger than that. If you want to be a part of this movement, then help out with this. Help support these farmers who are practicing these concepts that you're talking about. And I've heard you mention this, many times, and how important it is, because a lot of these farmers aren't even small farmers, real small farmers, maybe even backyard farmers, which I've met several here in Arizona. It doesn't really even take an insane amount of customers for them to kind of run a little profitable business and
That's
to get
right.
them off the ground. And then all of a sudden, within 2 years, they have more customers than they know what to do with. And then a friend of theirs catches the fire and starts doing it themselves. And then all of a sudden we have a lot of farmers out there. And one of the concepts that I wanted to talk to you about that I've heard you speak about is this idea that the vast majority of existing farmers right now are getting older, and there's a lot of young people out there that are fascinated and interested in getting into farming, maybe are into farming, but again, the system that we have, they feel like the setup investments are so overwhelming that it discourages them from getting involved. But you have some ideas around how to overcome that, and I'd really love to hear what you have to say about that.
Sure. Well, so yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The aging farmer, the average American farmer, is 60 years old, and so how do we overcome this hurdle, this successional hurdle? If old people can't get out, if young people can't get in, old people can't get out, and so. What we're looking at is what we've developed here, kind of a three-pronged approach. First of all, the farm needs to be mobile. So when you have the infrastructure, then you don't have to worry about the land cost, because you can place the farm anywhere. When your infrastructure is mobile, you can place it anywhere. And so a mobile farm frees you up from that capitalization cost of land. Also, mobile infrastructure it can be done without any permits or anything, because it's not a machine, it's not a building, it doesn't get taxed, there's no license. There's a lot of benefits there. Secondly, if it's modular, so if you're building something that you can start small and grow into, that gives you a pathway in, as opposed to starting on a large scale. If you want to grow one chicken for Tyson, the first thing you got to do is build a $400,000 house. But if you want to do a pastured chicken, you can just not go to the movies for a month, save your money, and you're up and running. If you like it, then you build another one. You build another one. And if you like it as much as we do, then you build 120. But the point is, it's scalable up and down without prejudice. And so mobile, modular, and then the third is that it's management intensive. So what you do is you're trading concrete, energy intensity, capital intensity, like depreciable infrastructure, and pharmaceuticals. You're trading all of that for people-centric systems, and that is a strategic decision. So people say, well, it takes more people to farm the way you farm. Yeah, it does, but it takes a lot fewer people working in drug labs. It takes a lot fewer people pouring concrete, a lot fewer people mining for oil, and those people can come and join us on the farm. So
And is it less money for you to pay these people than to make a payment on some humongous combine tractor?
Well, actually, that's the bad part of this, is that our tax structure rewards non-people. We incentivize depreciation, which incentivizes buying large capital investments. We incentivize expenses by allowing you to expense them off of your income taxes. But as soon as you have a person, now you've got workman's comp, minimum wage, OSHA regulations. A million. Social Security,
Jeez.
FICA withholding, a million different things. They got to be illegal. They got to be legal, not illegal. Legal. What I'm getting at is that our entire business financial accounting system is prejudicial against people centricity, and it's pro infrastructure and mechanical efficiency. However, I would argue that in the long run, we're still better doing it this way, because you have more accountability within the system. More eyes to pounds of stuff, ratio. Now, as soon as you go to management intensity, then you move your equity. Instead of your equity being in depreciable infrastructure, buildings and equipment, your equity then moves to what you know, what you do. So it moves to knowledge, skill, and customers. So when people ask me, what's the most valuable part of your farm, your business, I always say, well, it's our customers. That's our customer body. And the beauty is your customers are portable. They don't care whether you're farming on this side of the hill or that side of the hill, this side of town or that side of town. They will go with you where you do. So all of these things, create a nimble. That's the new word now, right? In the information age, a nimble ability to interact with your commercial interests. And the nice thing about having skill, information, and customers as your equity, the bank can't repossess those, and you don't have to borrow them from a bank. Your information, what you know, it goes with you. The bank can never say, I want all your information. I'm going to foreclose on on what you know.
Exactly.
They can't do that. And so, or I'm going to foreclose on your skill. They can't do that. They can't say, I'm going to take your skill away from you. And this creates a firewall of protection against the kind of, many of us are pretty frustrated at the way our whole financial network is developed in this country, and this creates a firewall of protection against that, because your equity and your value is tied up in non-foreclosable assets. That's actually pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you: would you say that the supply meaning local sustainable farming, is the supply meeting the demand from the customer for wanting products from local sustainable farming? Or is it the opposite? Or is what is really needed is to create more awareness with the potential customer base, and to let them know why it's worth spending a little extra money? Where is that? If we were in economics class, where are we at in terms of this industry?
Yeah, where's that balance right now? Well, I think it's actually pretty balanced right now. I would have said, probably 20 years ago, that the demand was far larger than supply. But I think now many farmers, and you mentioned even very small backyardists, whatever, have developed to meet the demand, and I think we need a much larger demand. I will say that part of what's holding it back is how did I say this? Is demand that is not appreciating the participatory requirement on the demand. In other words, I mean, what we're seeing in our business, for example, is, you know, people want to get local food, but they want to get local McNuggets, for example, and there's a whole series of additional hurdles and things, partly because regulatory requirements are very small scale prejudicial. So food requirements, like to value add, to make pot pie, to make eat and eat foods, you know, people want our food in a hot pocket, for example, and this is a huge hurdle, because we're not a great big company. You know, we don't have big factories. We don't have human resource people. We don't have, you know, HACCP plan writers, and we don't have pool tables for the food safety bureaucrats to want to come out and check us. So there's prejudice that's structural and attitudinal throughout the system to preclude small-scale participation in those kinds of convenience foods. And so what we desperately need are customers who are jazzed up and excited about getting back in their kitchens and doing their own processing, packaging, preparation, and preserving in their kitchens, so that they can buy. And this cheapens the price. You see, the most expensive heirloom Peruvian blue fingerling potatoes at the green markets in New York City are cheaper per pound than industrial GMO Lay's potato chips, okay, or whatever. I mean, I don't know if they're GMO or not, but anyway, you know what I'm saying, just GMO, regular industrial potato chips. The point that I'm making is that that we now have the technology in our kitchens. We've talked a little bit about technology on our farm. Well, you know, we have technology in our kitchens now. You know, it's not hearth cooking. You've got time bake. You've got, you know, hot and cold water on demand, refrigerator, you know, bread makers, ice cream makers, slow cookers, crock pot. I mean, we've got tons and tons of things that we can use now. And so what we desperately need now are for people to buy unprocessed, you know, whole foods, a whole chicken. I mean, you know that only 10% of all the chickens sold in the U.S. are sold as whole chickens. 90% go into further processing. I mean, that's an amazing consumer shift compared to 40 years ago. Just as recently as 40 years ago, there was no such thing as a boneless, skinless breast in a store. It didn't exist. If you want a boneless, skinless breast, you got a chicken, you took your knife, you cut out the boneless, skinless breast, you know. And so what we desperately need right now are people who are wanting to come down out of the stand and get in this participatory game of the food system, and not just sit back and say, well, I want local, nutrient dense, integrity food hot pockets.
Well, it's so funny to hear you say this, because part of what we are about in this with this website is realizing how all the systems are so connected. We in our society are addicted to convenience. There's no doubt about it. I'm a victim of it myself, and I quit my corporate job last September. Got fired, but that's another story for another time. Just want to be integrity on that, have some integrity on that. But you can see that people are so overworked in this country that there's a reason why we're so addicted to convenience. They kind of go hand in hand. You know, our time is short. We're tired. We're exhausted, and so the idea of going into the kitchen and, you know, milling some grain or making your own bread, it does seem a little overwhelming. But I can tell you that since leaving my own job, getting off of some of these conveniences and starting to do things again on my own is bringing such a happiness to me. I think humanity the pendulum has gone too far with convenience, that mechanization. I mean, like the movie WALL-E, where the people are up in the spaceship and they're just these giant fat lards sitting in chairs, can't even walk anymore. I mean, that's literally, technically, that would be where we would go if you go down an endless pursuit of convenience. And I think we as people need to take back control in that sense, take back a more balanced life. And I know you've inspired me actually to start making my own bread. My fiance and I have been talking about that. So we're gonna start doing that ourselves. And we've been growing food in our backyard and trying to just do as much as we can. You know, we're not totally self-sustaining, but it's bringing a mental happiness to our lives that we didn't see before, and we want to keep going this way. And
sure,
yeah,
well, it is extremely addictively gratifying when you start down this path, because what you find is that way down in our subconscious, we yearn for a connection to our ecological umbilical, to our roots, if you will.
Yeah.
And the self-affirmation and the self-actualization that comes from participating in the most intimate thing we do, besides, maybe sex and love, but food is you're taking stuff into your body. It becomes flesh of your flesh and bone of your bone, right? It's pretty intimate. When we participate in that, the affirmation that creates, as opposed to being the top point getter in Angry Birds, for example, is profound. And I would just encourage people, don't knock it, try it, and dip your toe in that water, and you don't have to immerse yourself day one, but dip your toe in, and you'll find, I think, great reward. And it'll be a skill that you get better and better at, and you'll start to make better decisions. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole web of ramifications that happen when we do that.
Joel, I wanted to end with this. Can you just describe to us what your part of what we want to do with this website is find people who are living passionately, because I do believe that when we are finding our purpose in this life, that we come alive, our lights turn on, and we shine really, really brightly. And you do, obviously. I mean, you're attracting, you're like a magnet for people because your light is so on. Really, it's just your passion. It's not even so much the facts that you spew out of your mouth. It's the passion that you have. I mean, the first time I saw you on Food Inc. or on the Joe Rogan podcast, it was like, who is this guy, man? I mean, this guy just freaking loves what he does. Can you explain what it means to you to be a steward of the land? And I know you've often used this term that Mother Earth is our lover. And I that gives me tingles every time I hear you say that. And could you kind of just explain to us, really, from a personal, spiritual level, what your relationship to the earth is, and this role you have of taking care of these animals and your connection with them and what that brings to you? Because I know you've mentioned your favorite, your paradise is just to be sitting with your cows and have them, licking your toes and stuff. And it's just that is a really powerful statement. I'd really love for you to be able to share that with us as we end this.
Sure. Well, the joy of my life is to be able to step out on the back porch every morning and actually see, smell, taste, touch this abundant nest in which we live. We live in a time of fear and paranoia, a fear of running out of things, a fear of scarcity. Mm-hmm. Oh no, there's not going to be as much. And the reality is that this is actually quite an abundant nest, and it has tremendous healing qualities. Just like when you scab your finger or something, that's another biological principle, not a mechanical. Mm-hmm. A bearing doesn't heal if it seizes up. You can ask its forgiveness all day for not lubricating it, but it still won't heal. But your wound can heal, and so for me, it's just this very powerful understanding that I live in this nest of abundance, that in my faith, I believe that God made it, and it is in fact an object lesson of spiritual truth. And so, is my farm illustrating and manifesting forgiveness? Is it manifesting neighborliness? Is it manifesting a dependency on something bigger than me, and something even that I can't see, like the gibberellins and the mycorrhizae, and the mycelium in the soil? And so, to be able to go out as a caresser of this nest in which we live, and touch it in ways that it responds abundantly and heals and manifests all these beautiful spiritual and physical principles of healing, is just a privilege and an honor beyond anything that I can imagine. I just can't imagine feeling like I can't participate, and so that's that's the passion. And then in my lifetime, to have watched this rock pile, gullied, eroded place, to watch soil build, to watch the rocks heal over with grass, and to see the abundant wildlife proliferation, the clear water instead of muddy water that comes off in a flood, to be able to watch this change in the landscape, and to know that I was able to personally touch that and stimulate that kind of positive change in a relatively short time, historically speaking,
right,
truly shows the resiliency and the redemptive capacity of these patterns. And it's just such a privilege and an honor to be able to be a part of that, something way bigger than me, and a legacy to leave it better for my grandchildren.
One of the biggest movements in shifting the paradigm on this planet is biomimicry. It's one of the groups out there called Bioneers has really changed my own life in terms of what biomimicry is just to get to find the solutions to the problems we face today. Let's look into nature, and that's basically what you're doing. And it's if we can look at the animals and we can actually learn from them, and they will tell us how to take care of them. They will tell us. The plants will tell us how to take care of them, and be stewards if we listen. And I think, and what you're doing is you're revitalizing a land, as you've said. When you got the land to begin with, it was in disarray, and then over 50 years or whatever it's been, you and your family have transformed it. And imagine everywhere across the world, there's Joel Salatin's families. Wouldn't it be great if you weren't some famous guy and this was just the normal thing? That'd be awesome. The earth would be in much better shape if that was the case, and that's where we're headed.
And I'm very quick to point out to people, the tragedy of our situation is we should be normal. This should be what what everybody sees, what everybody does.
Yeah.
So the tragedy is that it's so unusual. But one step at a time, and one bite at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Joel, it has been an honor to have you on. I so appreciate you. I know you're a busy man and you're getting pulled in many directions, and for you to take some time and to share yourself with everyone, part of our community and even your own community who will see this video, and hopefully people who aren't even of any of these communities will stumble upon this and really have a transformative experience by hearing what you're talking about. And I really want to thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me, and till next time.
Till next time. And if there's anything that we can ever do to support you and anything that you're doing, don't hesitate to reach out. If you need some coverage on something, if you got something you want to get off your chest, give me a call and we'll put it on the internet for you.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel. You have a wonderful day today.
You too. Thank you. Bye.